Dr. Yitzhak Kerem of the Aristotle University in Greece. He's a historian focusing on the Spanish Jewry and the Eastern Jewry. By the way, I'm against this the term that you can say African or whatever, but Eastern is always in relationship to whom. So please do not use the term Eastern. And he also focuses on the study of the Holocaust. He edits Sefarad and the Mizrach, published many articles, conducted studies at the Hebrew University, etc., etc. Yitzhak, everyone knows you, so it is truly our honor. Let us start the presentation about the mountain Jews during the Holocaust.
Thank the organizers and also the university here and the Dahan Center and all those that made this possible. It's a special event, and I'm glad to be here. In previous decades, it was known that mountain Jews, as well as Ashkenazim, were murdered by the Nazi German forces in Caucasus in the Mozdok region, or in Nalchik, the capital of Kabardino-Balkaria, but new episodes of killings and forced labor pertaining to the Jews of the region have come to light. Also, new dimensions of denial, recognition, non-recognition of mountain Jews as Jews by the German regime have come to the forefront, which in turn led to rescue or death. German institutes like the Deutsche Auslandsinstitut, the Institute for Grenz- und Auslandsstudien, and the Wannsee Institute had studied the mountain Jews to determine their racial status in 1941 and 1942, and focused on their origin, religious and ethnic classification, language, and percentage of Jewish blood. They made no definite conclusions, but they did advise that the Jews of the Caucasus should be viewed as a foreign body. The Germans had defined the Ashkenazi Jews as foreign elements in Europe, but the status of mountain Jews was dubious. The Karaites in Crimea persuaded the Germans that they were not really Jews, and the Georgian and Bukharan Jews in France initially convinced the Germans they were of Mosaic origin, but not of the Jewish race. But in 1944, the authorities no longer honored such a distinction and began arresting and deporting Uzbekistan Jews, but most survived and were not deported. The Portuguese... תראה, זה הבעיה של החדר, אני לא יודע מה לעשות.
אורה, יש מישהו שמטפל בעניין הטכני? לא שומעים טוב. רבותיי, יטפלו בזה. נא ל... שמעתי? מי יעלה לנו השמיימה?
זה יותר אור? Okay. The Portuguese Jews in Holland did not succeed in pulling off such deception, and 4,000 of their total numbers of 5,000 died in the death camps. Conversely, the Krimchuks of Crimea failed to convince the Germans they were not part of the Jewish people, and they were murdered. On the eve of World War II, in the USSR, there were between 35,000 and 53,000 mountain Jews, depending on varying estimates. But only some 3,000 were under Nazi occupation for very short periods of time. They were situated in Nalchik, the capital of the Autonomous Republic of Kabardino-Balkaria, which was occupied for only 2 months, in the town also of Mojik in the Autonomous Republic of North Ossetia, occupied for 4.5 months, and the villages of Bogdanovka and Mezhinskoye in the Stavropol territory, both occupied for also 4.5 months. On March 1st, 1942, 15 Jewish men of the Chaumian Kolkhoz were killed, and another 98 mountain Jews were put to death instantly by the Feld Gendarmerie with the assistance of the SD. On 16 March 1942, in Lev Poratoria, a non-Jewish member of the Chaumian Kolkhoz denounced 114 Jews. The Einsatzgruppen D, in cooperation with the military gendarmerie and the local collaborators, gathered up and murdered all 114 of these mountain Jews there. Kirill Pfefferman noted that according to the German military reports, the mountain Jews had been settled in the Crimea under the aegis of the American Joint Distribution Committee, whose aid the Soviet government accepted as part of a program to resettle Jews on the land. The Germans were aware of this, and it may have inclined the Einsatzgruppen D to view the mountain Jews there as participants in the same world Jewish conspiracy, and therefore kill them along with the Ashkenazim. After the Krasnodar and Stavropol regions were occupied by the Germans, the latter began disposing of mountain and other Jews. There are differing accounts and estimates of the killings amongst researchers. In late August 1942, the Germans captured 2 communities of mountain Jews located in the kolkhozes of Bogdanovka and Mezhinskoye in the Kursk area Stavropol territory. The Soviet government had sent them there in the 1920s. The mountain Jews were a major part of the general Jewish population in these locations. The entire Jewish population of the village of Mezhinskoye were moved for labor to the adjacent village of Kurskoye. According to Pfefferman, spontaneous incidents of looting Jewish property, brutalization of Jews, and murder multiplied rapidly. On 19 August 1942, the mountain Jews who remained in Mezhinskoye were gathered by an unidentified German unit, led outside the village, and were murdered by machine gun fire. On 20 September, the Germans informed the Jews of the Bogdanovka kolkhoz that they were to be evacuated since they were too close to the front. And on 24 September, some 450 Jews were executed outside the village. According to the Red Army archives, the Jews were all rounded up in a clubhouse. Then the men had to dig a pit and then wait in a group and finally bury the dead before their turn came. Women and children were killed afterwards. Altshuler coined this massacre as the Babi Yar of the mountain Jews, while the local population watched apathetically. On 19 October 1942, the Jews of Mezhinskoye kolkhoz were transferred to Kurskaya, where the Germans and local police executed 180 Jews, but some Jewish families escaped and were hidden by neighbors. Altshuler noted that there were some 10 families of Sabbath-observing Sabotniks, and 40 Jewish families remained in the village of Mezhinskoye, which had remained when the Germans had arrived there on 5 September 1942. Most of these people were victims of German killings, but they also were amongst the survivors. According to Kirill Pfefferman, 850 Jews were killed from these 2 kolkhozes. As the Wehrmacht advanced in August and October 1942 in Mozdok and at Nalchik, mountain Jews were proportionally more numerous. When the Germans conquered the city of Mozdok in mid-August 42, there were hundreds of mountain Jews there. While mountain Jews did register with the Germans and were in forced labor, they did not suffer wholesale mass murders like the Ashkenazi Jews. However, some mountain Jews were abused and occasionally murdered. In Mozdok itself, Jews moved around freely between August 42 and January 43, and attracted many Jews from the area as a safe haven, being close to the German-Russian front. On the other hand, numerous testimonies indicate that mountain Jews had to register and were sent to forced labor, while according to Ilya Altman, many Jews were executed in the vicinity of Mozdok in August 1942. According to Yitzhak Arad, the Jews of Mozdok were liberated in early January 1943 when the Soviet attack began, but in Severo-Ossetia, 3,000 to 3,300 Jews were killed, mostly refugees. Nalchik, with 3,000 mainly mountain Jews, was occupied by the Germans beginning on 28 October 1942 for a total of 65 days. More Jewish refugees from the occupied territories came to the city. The houses of mountain Jews in Nalchik were marked with Jewish stars by the German authorities. Some were thrown out of their houses in order to provide accommodations for the German soldiers, and those Jews were forced to live in their yards. All the Jews were confined into a fenced ghetto, had a curfew, were sent to daily forced labor without food, and others to labor camps. Property was plundered by the Germans, and some were arrested. Amongst the mountain Jews, adults and children had to perform forced labor, mainly picking up potatoes on farms. The Ashkenazic Jews were murdered in the first few weeks of the German occupation. Additionally, some mountain Jews were similarly killed by the Germans then. Feverman depicted the mountain Jews of Nalchik under the German occupation more acutely. And I begin the quote. Another example of the differing treatment of mountain Jews in different places occurred at the end of October 1942 in Nalchik. A large number of mountain Jews lived in Nalchik at the time, likely between 1,000 to 1,200. The Germans plundered their property more systematically than their non-Jewish neighborhoods. Also, the Germans put all mountain Jews to forced labor, unlike non-Jews. However, employment of the men of forced labor was not rigorously enforced, and that some of them managed to slip away. To be employed in forced labor meant that at least in a daytime, mountain Jews workers were moved away and concentrated in the forced labor sites. One trustworthy testimony indicates that sometimes this concentration also involved arrests of mountain Jews in a certain neighborhood of Nalchik called Kolonka, and their deportation to a camp without any provisions, though the victims survived until the Red Army returned. Finally, there were also incidents in which the Germans murdered some, but not all, mountain Jews, generally males. Any man of conscript age was prima facie considered a potential Red Army deserter, an agent, or a partisan, end of the quote. The mountain Jews had developed close relations with their Muslim neighbors, who regarded them as an indigenous Caucasian people. Alfred Rosenberg, Hitler's chief Nazi ideologist and head of the Reich Ministry for the occupied Eastern Territories, in May 1942 appointed Otto Brautigam, an expert on the Caucasus, to deal with the question of the mountain Jews and if they are Jewish or part of an indigenous mountain tribe. Brautigam visited the mountain Jews in Nalchik in December 1942, and later in his memoirs explained that he wished to prevent the annihilation of the mountain Jews, felt that he did not understand the cruel anti-Jewish persecution, and referred the matter to SS Brigade Führer Walter Bierkamp, leader of Einsatzgruppen D, who accepted the view that they were a harmless people, not Jews, but one of a people of mountain shepherds similar to the Turkish counterparts, who also practiced polygamy, and after visiting them in late 1942, he ordered not to execute them. He thought that because they practiced polygamy, this was a testimony to Muslim influence on them. In November 1942, a delegation of mountain Jews, fearing execution, since the SD had comprised a list of all the mountain Jews, met with Selim Chadov, a delegate of the German-formed National Council of Kabardino-Balkaria, who then influenced Marshal von Kleist, head of the Wehrmacht, Herr S. Gruppe A, in December 1942, and a German commission influenced them to view them as a native Tat mountain people with mixed couples, traditions, culture, and similar language. The issue of racial identity was forwarded to experts in Berlin. By late December 1942, the German authorities were inclined to view the mountain Jews not at all as Jews because physically they lacked a Jewish appearance and because they practiced polygamy. Arad explained that the local administration in Kabardino-Balkaria intervened on behalf of the mountain Jews of Nalchik. He added, as a result of Brautigam's appeal and that of the Kabardino-Balkaria leader, members of the German administration, as well as those of the SIPO, visited the mountain Jews in order to examine their lifestyle and customs. These visits raised doubts as to the racial origins of the mountain Jews. Their extermination was postponed, and the issue was passed over to racial experts in Berlin. These examinations and analyses saved the lives of most, but not all of the Jews of Nalchik. That's the end of Arad's description. Professor Kittal of the University of Tübingen, Vienna, wrote the following assessment for the Nazi regime and noted the differences between the Mountain Jews and Persian Jews and mainstream Judaism, and specified that they, the Jews of the Caucasus, merited special treatment. The Georgian Jews are part of the Jews of the Caucasus. They are divided between the Georgian Jews and those called Mountain Jews. 21,000 Georgian Jews spoke Georgian. Their lifestyle and outward appearances are almost not different than Georgians from the stomach and from birth. They have not apparently a special Georgian Jewish culture, not in language or in the manner of expression. About actions of hostility on the part of the population toward the Jews, there's almost no reporting in the last few hundreds of years. I do not know about them except for an incident from the year 1878, which also did not have far-reaching ramifications. The Mountain Jews, numbering approximately 25,000, live in the mountains, mainly in the provinces of Dagestan, Baku, Tarek, and Koban. They speak an Iranian dialect with a strong Turkish influence, coined Tat language. In dress and in food and in customs, they are apparently resembling the surrounding tribes. According to all the known material in my possession, they are very close in anthropological terms to their neighbors. They are active, first of all, in agriculture and the crafts. They have their own literature, but in addition to this, they have most certainly a great knowledge in ancient Jewish literature. I didn't find any data if Talmud fills any function amongst them. Their religious life is very full of local ideas about ghosts, demons, witches, and the like. They have their own agricultural holidays.
5 minutes.
All right. This is a long quote. I'm not going to continue. But he goes into detail about their customs, some of the things we've heard here. For tomorrow, will be very interesting about their folk customs. And he emphasizes the lack of anti-Semitism. Thus, there exists a justification for special treatment for the Caucasian Jews. Regarding the Iranian Jews, there is no strong base for as such. So this Nazi theoretician differentiated the Mountain Jews from the Iranian Jews, which he specified the Iranian Jews are rabbinic Jews, and there's no doubt that they're part of the Jewish people. Nonetheless, more than 100 Mountain Jews in Nalchik had already been killed. Other local Jews and Jewish refugees from elsewhere were also murdered. According to the Soviet Extraordinary Commission, over 600 people were put to death in anti-tank ditches 2 miles from Nalchik, behind the airport. Altman mentioned a sole execution of a few dozen European Jews and 10 Mountain Jews in Nalchik in November 1942. According to German sources, the last group of Nalchik Jews taken for execution was at the beginning of 1943, just before the Soviet offensive and liberation of the city on 5 January 1943. Debates about the status of the Mountain Jews continued until May 1943 without any conclusion. In total, there were about 1,000 Mountain Jews murdered out of 5,000. Altshuler published in 1990, at a relatively early stage of research before archives opened up after the fall of the Communist Soviet Union, that dozens of Mountain Jews who had not managed to escape from incarceration had remained in forced labor after the Germans entered Nalchik, were taken to dig anti-tank trenches, and were eventually murdered by the Germans among some 600 to 900 men, women, and children. While it cannot be determined how many Jews were murdered, most were not Jewish. And Altshuler pointed out that a false impression was created in 1943 when the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. had published that most of the victims were Jewish in order to rally Jewish public opinion to benefit the Soviets in the West. Also in the Northern Caucasus, in a recent study presented in 2010-2011 in Holocaust reparations trials in Tel Aviv and Haifa for the Caucasian Jews by Kirill Pfefferman, it was noted that up to 1,400 Mountain Jews were murdered in the village of Ganshtovka, but this still remains to be authenticated. Okay, I'll read the conclusion. In the kolkhozes Bogdanovka and Meshinskoye, and in the surrounding area, most of the mountain Jews and other Jewish refugees were executed by German killing units. In Mozdok, mountain Jews were murdered by the Nazis, and they were recruited to forced labor. But in general, the Jews could move about freely in the area, and Jewish refugees congregated there. In Nalchik, there were over 1,000 mountain Jews. Most were not persecuted since the Nazis considered them as an ancient Mosaic tribe with Turkish Muslim customs rather than traditional Jews of Jewish race, and most survive. But at least 100 or more were murdered by the Nazis.